Hello, everybody. Welcome back. JEB and Flow. I'm JEB. I have something that I want to talk about this week that I think about a lot. And really, I think every week it's important that maybe I explain that I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on anything. In fact, I don't really know anything. If you think about the amount of knowledge that's available out there, I know a very small percentage of it. And I don't want to ever come across like I pretend to. But there's a lot of things that I love to think about, and I love to talk about, and I love to get other people thinking and talking about those things too. I think that if more people think and talk about more stuff, then cool things happen. And in terms of talking, writing, even thinking, what I want to talk about this week is basically the power of language. The power of the words that you choose to use, whether you're writing them, typing them, speaking them, and even thinking them. So So there's this guy, I want to credit him because he's the one that told me about this. His name is Mark England, and he does a really great TED Talk on the power of language, basically. It has he's a great program. Anyways, there's a word that we like to associate with magic, like the magic word. And if I ask most people, hey, what's the magic word? What do you say to like cast a spell or whatever? Most people are going to say abracadabra, abracadabra. And abracadabra always makes me think of the movie Half-Baked. That's a whole other story. But if you haven't seen that movie, you should go check it out because it's amazing. Abracadabra is an Aramaic word. And what it means is, with my word, I create. So in some ways, it does have sort of a magical quality to it because you're able to say something and create it. With my word, I create. That is a lot of power just by using words. You may have heard the phrase, in the beginning was the Word. The words that you choose to use, the words that you choose to read, the words that you choose to allow to penetrate into your mind, into your feelings, into your life, are very, very powerful. The whole sticks and stones thing, not true. We'd want it to be true, but it's not. So, really what got me interested in talking about this week was something that Kim had said. Kim's part of the street parking team. She's amazing. And she brought up something on a live video yesterday, depending on when you see or hear this, about, how we speak to each other and certain standards that we use to speak to each other. And I'll get to that in just a second. But it reminded me a lot of the 4 Agreements. If you don't know what the 4 Agreements are, it's a book by this guy, Don Miguel Ruiz. And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And I just love that agreement. So listening to Kim kind of reminded me of that. And in this book, they say that the first agreement, be impeccable with your word, is by far the most important of the 4 agreements. And it's also the hardest one. It's really hard. I want to talk about what that actually means. And if you want to learn more, you should definitely go check out that book. If you get the audio book, It's one of those books that you could definitely listen to and pretty much retain all of it, but it's very short. So you could knock it out in like an hour and then revisit it. So be impeccable with your word. Doesn't always just mean, it doesn't mean tell the truth. It means be impeccable with your word. Really, it means to recognize the power of your word and to realize just how much weight can be contained within your word. So the word impeccable basically means without sin. And I think we mostly hear the word sin in a religious context, but really sin just means like to go against your morals. It's a moral wrongdoing, or to go against yourself. So to be impeccable means to not go against yourself. It means to stay true to yourself, to who you are, on a pure level, who you are. So when we are not impeccable with our word, when we gossip, when we say things that are hurtful to other people, when we say things that are hurtful to ourselves, when we are motivated by ego in the way that we speak, that is not being impeccable with our word. There is something in our word, in our language, that is going against ourself. So most of the time, it's harmless. We do this constantly. That's why it's so hard to actually adhere to the first agreement all the time. I don't know if anybody can do it all the time, but we can try. And as long as we're trying, things get better. Here's the way I like to think about this. Okay, there's two things really. So the amount of love that you have for yourself, the way that you see yourself, the way that you value yourself is directly, positively associated with your word, with the integrity of your word. So how you speak to other people and how you speak internally to yourself is a direct reflection of how you actually feel about yourself. If you're mean to other people, you probably are unhappy with yourself. Somebody told me a long time ago something that I felt was just such a beautiful statement, and it was so simple. They basically said, people who are happy, joyous, and free don't go around hurting people. And it's very easy to say things that are hurtful, and we all know when we're doing it. But we kind of do it anyways, because sometimes we're like, I'm just taking a little jab at them, or, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or, oh, I'm online, so like I'm anonymous, and it's not really real, because it's just like one profile picture talking to another profile picture, but there are real people involved with real feelings, and, we won't get into the other agreements, but the other agreements are don't take anything personally, don't assume anything, always do your best. So, if you're getting really hurt by things, by other people's language, and other people not being impeccable with their word, probably we're taking things personally and we're assuming things, and those are violating other agreements. So what we can pretty much expect to be guaranteed is that not everyone is going to be that true to their word. Not everyone is going to be impeccable with their word. They're just not, and we can't expect them to be. All you can do is try to work on how you use your word and your language. So I think the big one in terms of being true to your word, being impeccable with your word, is obviously having to do with honesty, being able to be honest with other people, but also to be honest with ourselves. It's really hard to be honest with ourselves because there's a lot of other dialogue that comes in and out of our brain that tries to convince us, no, this is the real thing. And this is really how you should feel about this because this person wronged you. And how is this going to make you look to that person? None of that's real. But beyond honesty, really the other one is like gossip. And this is the way I like to look at gossip. It's like sugar. Sugar, somebody asked me once, and it was a great question, and it took me a while to kind of come up with an answer, and I'm getting more and more happy with the answer to this. But it's developing. All of this is just constantly developing. Why, if sugar is so bad for you, why does it taste so good? Why do we like things that are sweet? If sugar, which is really what is in things that are sweet, is so bad for us. And I looked into it, and the best description or answer that I could come up with was that, at some point, sugar and eating a lot of sweet things served us like on an evolutionary level. If you look at the sugar content in root vegetables versus like summer vegetables or spring vegetables, the sugar content is a lot higher in the root vegetables. And those are the ones that are harvested in the fall and in the winter, early winter. So going into the winter, just naturally the foods that become ready to eat around that time have higher sugar content. Because we're going into a period where there is not going to be as much food. There's going to be more scarcity. So we like things that are sweet. These vegetables are sweet. And so we start eating more and more of them because we like the sweetness and we eat more food. And now you can see it like in the wintertime, a lot of times we eat more and more food. And it's because it's cozy or it's cold outside. But at some point that actually was something that helped us survive the winter. So we like things that are sweet because honestly, at some point, that's what kept us alive. We go gravitate towards the sweet things. We eat a lot of those sweet things. The sugar, if we eat a lot of it, doesn't really get used for fuel right away, and we store it as fat, and we can use that fat later when there is less food. So that's sugar. Gossip is the same way. Gossip is just like sugar to me. At one point, gossip probably served a purpose. I've looked at the history of gossip, like when did it start? And what is it really? And I think, there's a lot of definitions, but basically gossip is talking about other people that aren't there. And at some point, it might have been important on a tribal level. Like you need to know who is going to be the guy that steps up on a hunting trip and isn't going to run away from the tiger, but is actually going to fight the tiger. Or the people that are, really good at finding berries, like they need to have that reputation. Or the person that's like, can't be trusted. In a small tribe, you need to know who those people are. When you have that many competing, maybe nearby tribes, and you've got predators out there that can take you out, then, and you've got people that are essentially helping, it's not just like one set of parents is raising one child. It's like everybody's raising everybody's kids. It's important to know things about other people. And now, just the way that sugar has been processed to the point where it's like they've found that one little, like they call it the Bliss Point. There's these companies that put a lot of research and development to find the Bliss Point, the point at which you get the maximum amount of enjoyment from a processed food. And sometimes, most of the time, it has to do with sugar, but it has to do with the crunch, the saltiness, all this other stuff. But you get this like little hit, this little like chemical reaction in your brain. It's like a drug. And that same thing happens when you get a little nugget of information about somebody. When you get a little morsel of gossip, it's like, it's like this nice little hit, you know? And it's over time, if you do that a lot, and if you keep feeding yourself sugar and you keep feeding yourself gossip, you will get sick. You will get sick and you will die. You'll just become very unhappy. Life will not be fun. It'll be unpleasant. And really what that comes down to is allowing the word to get contaminated with toxic elements, right? It's no longer impeccable. It's no longer a pure thing, right? And you can choose how pristine you want to keep the word that goes out of you and the words that you allow to go in. So when it comes to gossip, coming back to the thing that Kim was talking about, the standards that she uses for how her boys are allowed to talk to each other, which I thought was so cool. And I did a little digging. I was telling Carolina about it, and she was like, oh yeah, I've heard about this. So I looked it up, and there's a poem by a woman named Beth Day, and it was written in 1835. It's called The Three Gates. And I'm not going to read the poem to you. It's very short, but I will basically explain what it means. So when you hear something that somebody else has told you about somebody else, or you hear something that you heard somewhere else, you hear one of those little nuggets, one of those little morsels. Before you speak, before you allow that little piece of information to travel through you and out of your mouth, let it pass through 3 gates, 3 golden gates. And each gate gets progressively narrower. So the first one, is it true? Is what you are going to say true? Is the thing that you heard true? If it's not true, it cannot pass that first gate. Game over. You don't say it. You don't let that thing pass on any further, and you don't let it penetrate any deeper into your own mind or spirit or, emotional bank account. The second gate, if it passes through the first gate, right? It's true. Okay, cool. Goes to the second gate. Second gate, is it needful? Is this necessary? What purpose does this serve? What purpose does me taking this in and internalizing it serve? And me saying it, spreading this information, putting it out into the world, knowing that my job is to be impeccable with my word, to not hurt people, but to spread happiness and joy and freedom. Is this necessary? If it's necessary, awesome. Go to the third gate. If it's not necessary, which almost most of the stuff that we say is not really necessary. So we should all just pretty much be a lot more quiet and be okay with that. Anyways, if it's not necessary, if it doesn't serve any purpose other than to blow up your own ego, make you look better, make you feel, to not feel better, because stuff should make you feel better, but that temporary little hit, that temporary little distraction that takes you away from maybe what the underlying issue is. If it's not necessary, don't say it. Just don't. And then the last gate, the narrowest gate. Is it kind? Is what I'm going to say kind? If it's not kind, there is no reason it needs to be said. I think there's a lot of people out there that would be like, oh, well, it's necessary and it's true. I don't care if it's not kind because it's so necessary and it's true. I got to say it. Not for us to decide. Life will be a lot better if you use those 3 gates. It's tempting to not, because sometimes it feels really good to say mean things. Sometimes if I'm not feeling good, I want to make other people feel as bad as I feel. I want them to feel as insecure as I've felt. So I know how to say those things to make them feel that way. And that enjoyment lasts for about a half a second, and then I feel terrible. I feel guilty, and then I have to either apologize or not apologize and feel even worse. So if you can allow your language to travel through those 3 gates, your life will improve. Now, like I said, it's really hard. It's really hard. It's almost impossible. So I have a cool thing that you can do this week that you can start to pay attention to your language more. And you can pay attention to your word. And the more respect you have for your word, the more respect you develop for yourself and vice versa. So it'd be real easy to just be like, okay, for the next week, everything that you say has to be impeccable, or everything that you say has to go through these 3 gates. That is a very unreasonable expectation to have of anyone. That's not an expectation that I would have for myself, therefore not one I would ever be able to have of anyone else. But I do have one thing that you can do. So for the next week, here's what I want you to do. Challenge yourself for 1 week, for 7 days. You're going to not say 2 words. The 2 words that you are not allowed to say for 7 days is always and never. So for the next 7 days, do not say always or never. I believe his name was Wendell Johnson, and I might butcher this quote, but he said, okay, let me think about this. Well, I can't remember it. Look up the quote by Wendell Johnson, but basically it's like, the only times that you should use the word always and never is like never. I totally butchered it, but look it up. Always and never. Never say the word never. Never say the word always. Well, we're going to not start with never. We're going to start with 7 days. So just do that for 7 days. That is the first step in becoming a little bit more impeccable with your word. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, for watching, for listening, and ask me questions. Hit me up anytime in comments or DMs if you have that info. And I will tell you right now, we might have a little fun thing coming soon as far as a way to get a hold of me and perhaps give us some things to talk about on the podcast. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be cool. I hope you guys have a really great week. I love you, and I will talk to you soon.